Okay, you guys are gonna love this one. Somebody asked me if Americans would ever take farm jobs if they paid well. The short answer, as an ex-farm worker, yeah, absolutely. Americans would work on farms if it were a real job you could live on. And stay with me, because you know there's also gonna be a long answer. But quality farm jobs would also solve a bonus problem. You know how farmers' kids don't want to farm anymore, so they wind up selling the farm? Quality farm jobs would fix that. These are two big problems that can solve each other if we step back and think clearly about farms as a workplace and as a career. If you listen till the end, I'm going to tell you about some places in the US that are already doing something really close to this. Okay, long answer time. The problem with farm jobs isn't exactly low pay. Believe it or not, farm wages are already at or near a living wage for rural areas and have been for at least a decade. I'm going to put up the H-2A minimum wage for 2025. That's for guest workers using an H-2A visa to do farm work legally in the US. That's documented. That's the document you're supposed to have, is H-2A visa. Now, farmers definitely do complain that this H-2A minimum wage is too high, but they also keep hiring more and more H-2A workers. So the law of the market is telling us these are wages farms are willing and able to pay, and do so on a regular basis already. The problem is also not that Americans don't want to work hard. The problem is picking crops the way we do it in most of the US has no upward mobility. It's a dead-end job. So the many, many Americans who are willing to work hard go do it somewhere else, where all that hard work will actually get you somewhere. That's the problem. Here's a partial list of physically demanding, dangerous jobs that lots of Americans do. Some pay well, a lot of them don't even. Maybe they offer other benefits. So we've got, for starters, EMTs, firefighting, nursing, dancing at the club, construction, trash pickup, plumbing, last but not least, military. I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We are home to the largest military installation in the world, so my neighbors are tens of thousands of young Americans who signed up on purpose for boot camp and getting shot at for very modest pay. So you cannot tell me the problem is Americans won't work hard for low pay. Lots of Americans also do jobs where you spend years or decades paying your dues with long hours, trash wages, and even going hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt for the privilege. Think doctors and lawyers. So whatever's keeping Americans out of farm work, it's not the physical labor and it's not the low pay, because lots of Americans are out there right now doing physically hard and dangerous jobs that do not pay well, or both. So now let's talk about the upward mobility, or the lack of it, in US agriculture. This doesn't get as much attention. We just kind of wrap it up in low pay, but with farm wages at record highs and Americans still not taking those jobs, clearly these other elements of upward mobility matter. And they're things like farm jobs the way the US does them right now are short gigs. There's a big learning curve to get started, and it's still a dead-end job. So let's talk about each of these things, what they mean, and how we can fix it. Let's start with how farm work is short gigs and it's tough to get started in. Farm jobs picking crops usually last maybe 2 months tops. So you're always looking for your next gig while you're working the one you already have. You need a working car to get to the next place, and you need to line up places to live for 2 to 8 weeks at a time. All of that is expensive. It's an expensive job to have, and you'll never see your kids. Now, if you're young, single, and already have people in your life who are experienced farm workers, then you have people showing you how to do the job. Hookups to the next job, how to find places to stay. Otherwise, it takes years to piece all that together on your own. So you might as well just stay in your hometown and be a cashier. The chances for upward mobility in retail and food service, working your way up to manager, saving enough to franchise a store, are not great, but they do exist. In agriculture, outside a few pockets in the West, those opportunities for upward mobility just do not exist at all. In most of the US, if you start your career picking crops, you'll end it picking crops too. There is no ladder to climb here. Now let's talk. There's a big learning curve just to get started in farm work. There is a reason the military puts everyone through boot camp and offers housing. The job requires a certain level of physical competence, training to use dangerous equipment, and a lot of moving around from posting to posting. Boot camp and housing is how the military makes that work. If you want a steady pipeline of new people coming into a physically demanding, dangerous job where they have to move all the time, well, they're gonna need an on-ramp and places to crash. Now we can argue all day about who should be responsible for that in agriculture, but that is what it takes. Last but not least, farm work is a dead-end job. A sane farm sector would be set up so people can work their way up. Start out as field hands, advance through field or packing house operations, earn enough money to buy into land. Kind of like how doctors and lawyers do with working their way into a partnership with their practices. And by the way, farming in the Midwest used to work like this for about 50 years, ending around 1900. There's a so-called agricultural ladder where men could start as field hands and work their way up to sharecropper, tenant farmer, new farmer with a mortgage, pay it off, now you're an established farmer. That agricultural ladder collapsed around 1900, and it was a huge deal. It was a massive economic implosion that we have now just completely forgotten about. So now in agriculture, we really like to complain about how nobody wants to work on farms anymore because we've totally forgotten why people ever wanted to work on farms in the first place. There was upward mobility, there was a ladder to climb, and there's not anymore. It's been gone for over a century. That's the problem. So many problems in agriculture come from farmers thinking we know our history, and we really don't. A farm sector built for upward mobility would grow a lot of things with different seasons, maybe a lot of greenhouses in addition to the grain and livestock that the US already does so much of. So there's as much steady year-round work as possible. I know I'm biased on this because I live in the South, but we can do a lot more year-round farming in most of the US than we think we can. That means a lot more farm jobs can be proper, steady, year-round jobs. A farm sector built for upward mobility would also just include a lot more fruit and veggie crops in general. This is why I'm always talking up fruits and veggies. These crops bring in a lot more money per acre than grain, which means you can afford to pay people. And they're finicky, so you have to pay skilled people to help you grow them. They also need services like nurseries, sometimes specialized harvest and handling equipment, pest control that doesn't kill off pollinators. These are all skilled, fairly well-paid jobs that people can move into once they have field experience. And these jobs pay enough that you can save up and buy farmland from doing those jobs. They're bridge jobs. They can get you from working on a farm to owning one. Without those bridge jobs, upward mobility in modern agriculture does not exist. There's no way to build up experience that also pays enough that you can buy land doing that work. Fruit and veggies and all the bridge jobs they create are why, in the parts of the US that do grow more of those finicky crops, you see a stronger farm economy that earns more money and has way more upward mobility for workers. Right now, the only parts of the US where farming works like that is a few counties in California. Now here's where it gets interesting. You may have heard that California is where the big bad corporate agriculture happens. That is part of the story, and it's not the whole story. It's also always kind of funny when someone tries to tell me how bad things are in California, because I'm in the South. Anyway, one of the many things that goes on in certain counties in California is upward mobility for farm workers, because all those things we just talked about, year-round work, crops that earn good money, bridge jobs, all of that. And because farm workers can actually work their way up and buy farmland, it is not a given that growing up on a farm guarantees you'll inherit it someday. And I think that kind of freaks some people out. If you think farming is supposed to be a real job where workers deserve a proper livelihood, then upward mobility is obviously good. But if you believe that farming is about legacy and a way of life, upward mobility is the last thing you want. Just marinate with that for a minute. Anyway, let's talk results. Ventura County, California is one of those places where there's upward mobility for farm workers. It's also where the big ice raids were in early July, and it's the closest farmland to Los Angeles. Ventura County grows about a fifth of the US's entire strawberry crop, just from that one county. And a third of our national crop of lemons and avocados also come from this one county. It's so close to Los Angeles that the land there is in super high demand for development. Farmland there was selling for $60,000 to $80,000 an acre as farmland back before COVID. This is exactly the kind of place we're told should be full of corporate farms. But 89% of the farms in Ventura County, California are family farms, and nearly 3/4 of them are 50 acres or less. Close to 1 in 5 farmers in that county are Latino, and close to 1 in 3 are new and beginning farmers. That's what upward mobility looks like in agriculture. It can be done. And if I had to guess, that's got a lot to do with why the farmers in Ventura County are so good at staying in farming when the pressure and the temptation to sell to developers is so high. Their farmland is full of people who had to work their way up. They really know their business, and they really want to be there. They didn't just wind up in farming by some accident of birth, they're there on purpose. And that's the power of upward mobility in farming. It's better for people, and it's better for agriculture, period. So long story short, yeah, it is definitely possible to do farming in a way that Americans would want to pick crops. I certainly did my time in field work, and if I'd been in one of the few places in the US where that was a real career ladder instead of a dead-end job, I'd have kept doing it. So either I'm a real weirdo, or we already have a pretty good idea of how to do this. A lot of farmers in Ventura County, California would agree. And I'm going to end it with this. If we did farm jobs this way around the US, we'd also stop losing farms just because my kids don't want to farm. There would always be a new pipeline of well-trained new farmers with experience, skills, and enough savings to buy the farms from retiring farmers. So I'm thinking we should look into that.